The crimson sun bled across the ravaged skyline of what was once Earth, casting long, skeletal shadows from the remnants of skyscrapers that clawed at the bruised sky. Dust devils, like restless spirits, danced across the cracked and barren plains where oceans once roared. 3,000 years. 3,000 years since the Galactic Council, in their infinite, cold logic, deemed humanity a threat, a cancer spreading across the galaxy, and delivered their devastating judgment. 3,000 years since the skies rained fire, and the earth wept molten tears. 3,000 years since humanity was scattered, broken, and all but extinguished. Or so they thought, tonight, under the watchful gaze of a sky littered with the ghosts of dead stars, a flicker of defiance ignited in the heart of what was once called the American Midwest. Not a grand army, not a unified force, but small pockets of survivors, descendants of those who managed to escape the Council's wrath, clinging to life amidst the ruins. They lived in the shadows, whispered stories of the old Earth, of its vibrant cultures, its towering cities, its boundless potential. Stories that had become legends, myths passed down through generations, fueling a simmering resentment, a burning desire to reclaim what was stolen. Among these scattered remnants, a young woman named Anya stared at the horizon, her eyes reflecting the dying embers of the setting sun. She wasn't a soldier, nor a leader, but a scavenger, a survivor skilled in navigating the treacherous landscape, scavenging for scraps of technology, remnants of a bygone era. Her weathered face, framed by strands of wind-tossed hair, spoke of hardship and resilience. She carried no weapons, only a battered satchel filled with salvaged tools and a tattered book, a relic from the past, its pages filled with images of a world she had never known. A world that existed only in stories. Anya wasn't driven by vengeance, not entirely. She was driven by something more fundamental, a primal instinct to survive, to protect the small community that had taken her in, a group of elders and children huddled together in a hidden enclave, a sanctuary carved out of the ruins of a once great city. They were all that was left of her family, all that was left of her connection to the past. Tonight, however, the familiar rhythm of their harsh existence was shattered. Anya returned from her scavenging trip to find her community in a state of terrified chaos. The whispers were frantic, the faces pale. Raiders. They had been attacked. Not the usual bands of desperate scavengers, but something different. Organized. Disciplined. Wearing strange, metallic armor, wielding weapons that crackled with unfamiliar energy. They had taken some of the elders, those who held the knowledge, the stories, the fragile threads that connected them to their past. Fear turned to a cold dread in Anya's heart. This wasn't just a raid. This was a message. A message from a force they had long feared, a force they had hoped was just a nightmare, a phantom of their ancestors' trauma. A force that had returned, across the desolate plains, in a hidden fortress built into the side of a mountain range that had once been called the Rockies. A figure stood silhouetted against the flickering light of a holographic display. He was tall and imposing, clad in black armor that hummed with latent power. His face, though hidden behind a mask, radiated an aura of cold authority. He was known only as the Commander, and he was the vanguard of a new order, a force that had risen from the ashes of the old. The Commander surveyed the holographic map, which displayed the scattered remnants of humanity, tiny blips of light flickering across the desolate landscape. He had been searching for them for decades, these descendants of the old Earth, these inheritors of a dangerous legacy. He had heard the whispers, the legends of their resilience, their stubborn refusal to die. He knew they posed a threat, a potential spark that could ignite a new rebellion against the Council, a rebellion he was determined to crush before it could even begin. His orders were clear: eliminate the remaining humans. Secure any remnants of their technology, their knowledge, their history. Wipe them from the face of the galaxy, once and for all. He had the resources, the technology, the unwavering loyalty of his troops. He would not fail. The Commander's gaze settled on a particular blip of light, a small cluster of survivors hidden in the ruins of what was once called Chicago. His intelligence had indicated that this group possessed something of interest, something that could be useful. He had dispatched a squad of his elite soldiers to retrieve it. And to send a message. Back in the ruins of Chicago, Anya watched as the last of the raiders disappeared into the desolate landscape, their armored vehicles rumbling across the cracked earth. The fear in her heart was now mingled with a burning rage. They had taken her elders, the keepers of their history, the last vestiges of their connection to the past. They had dared to invade their sanctuary, to violate their fragile peace. She knew she couldn't stay here, cowering in fear. She had to do something. But what could one scavenger, one young woman armed with nothing but her wits and a tattered book, possibly do against a force that seemed so powerful, so overwhelming? As if in answer, she glanced down at the book in her hands. It was a history book, salvaged from the ruins, filled with stories of human ingenuity, human resilience, human courage. Stories of a time when humanity had reached for the stars. When they had built great cities, when they had explored the vastness of the galaxy. Stories of a time before the Council's judgment, before the devastation, before the long, silent years of exile. In those stories, she found a flicker of hope, a spark of defiance. She might be just one person, but she carried within her the legacy of her ancestors, the spirit of a race that had once dared to dream among the stars. And that spirit, she realized, was not so easily extinguished. She looked at the faces of the children, their eyes wide with fear, their hope hanging by a thread. She couldn't let them lose that hope. She couldn't let the stories die. Anya made a decision. She would follow the raiders. She would find her elders. She would reclaim what was stolen. She didn't know how, she didn't know what she would face, but she knew she had to try. For her community, for her ancestors, for the future of humanity. As the crimson sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a shroud of darkness, Anya slipped into the shadows, a lone figure embarking on a perilous journey, a journey into the heart of a new war, a war that had been brewing for 3,000 years. The war for Earth. The war for humanity. The war for the future. And as she vanished into the darkness, a single whisper echoed on the wind, a promise, a prayer, a declaration: they would not be forgotten. They would not be broken. They would return. The biting wind whipped at Anya's ragged cloak as she followed the tracks left by the raiders. They were easy to follow, the heavy treads of their armored vehicles carving deep gouges in the cracked earth. She moved like a ghost, slipping through the shadows, using the ruins as her cover, her senses honed by years of scavenging and survival. The book, her constant companion, was tucked safely inside her satchel, a silent reminder of what she was fighting for. The tracks led her north, towards the desolate mountain range that loomed on the horizon. Anya knew those mountains. She had heard whispers of them, stories told by the elders, tales of a hidden fortress, a place of power, a place where the enemy lurked. The stories had always been dismissed as myths, remnants of old fears, but now, seeing the tracks leading directly to the mountains, Anya knew they were true. As she journeyed, Anya's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of information she had gathered over the years. She remembered the stories of the Galactic Council, the ancient and powerful alliance of alien races that had ruled over a vast empire. They had been benevolent rulers, or so the history books claimed, until they encountered humanity. Then, their benevolence turned to fear, their fear to hatred, and their hatred to annihilation. The Council, it was said, had deemed humanity too aggressive, too expansionist, a species destined to consume everything in its path. They had seen the potential for greatness in humanity, but they had also seen the darkness, the capacity for destruction. And they had chosen to eliminate the threat before it could fully bloom. Anya didn't understand the Council's logic. She had only known the harsh reality of their judgment, the desolate world they had left behind. She had only known the struggle for survival, the constant fear of being discovered, the pain of loss. But she also knew the stories of human resilience, of their ingenuity, their courage. Stories of a time when humans had explored the stars, built magnificent cities, and created wonders beyond imagination. Stories that filled her with a sense of pride, a sense of belonging to something greater than herself. As she neared the mountains, the landscape grew even more desolate, the air thinner, the silence more profound. The tracks led her to a narrow canyon, a dark gash in the earth that seemed to swallow the light. Anya hesitated, a shiver running down her spine. She felt a sense of foreboding, a feeling that she was entering a place of great danger, but she pressed on, driven by her determination, her desire to find her elders, her need to know the truth. She knew that the answers she sought lay hidden within those mountains, within the fortress that lay ahead. The canyon opened into a vast, hidden valley, a place shielded from the outside world by the towering peaks. And there, nestled against the side of a mountain, was the fortress. It was a massive structure, built of dark metal and stone, its walls bristling with weapons, its entrances guarded by heavily armored figures. It was a symbol of power, a testament to the might of the enemy. Anya watched from the shadows, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew she couldn't attack the fortress directly. It was too well defended. She would have to find another way in, a way to infiltrate the enemy's stronghold. She studied the fortress, searching for a weakness, a vulnerability. She noticed a small, almost hidden entrance on the far side, a maintenance access that seemed less heavily guarded. It was a long shot, but it was her only chance. As darkness fell, Anya began her approach, moving stealthily through the shadows, using the terrain to her advantage. She reached the maintenance access and carefully examined the entrance. It was a narrow opening, barely large enough for her to squeeze through, and it was sealed by a heavy metal door. Anya pulled out her salvage tools, a collection of screwdrivers, wrenches, and other implements she had gathered over the years. She worked quickly and quietly, trying to disable the locking mechanism. It was a slow and painstaking process, but finally, with a soft click, the door swung open. Anya slipped inside, finding herself in a dark and narrow tunnel. She pulled out a small flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. The tunnel led deeper into the mountain, winding its way through the rock. As she ventured further into the fortress, Anya began to hear sounds, the muffled voices of the enemy, the hum of machinery, the clanking of metal. She moved cautiously, staying close to the walls, listening intently. She came to a large chamber, a vast space filled with rows of armored vehicles, weapons racks, and holographic displays. It was a staging area, a place where the enemy prepared for their operations. Anya watched from the shadows as soldiers moved about, their faces hidden behind masks, their voices distorted by their helmets. They spoke in a strange language, a language she didn't understand. But she could sense their confidence, their arrogance, their unwavering belief in their own superiority. She saw her elders being led through the chamber, their hands bound, their faces pale and drawn. They were being taken to another part of the fortress, deeper within the mountain. Anya knew she had to act quickly. She had to find a way to rescue them, to get them out of this place. But she was just one person, alone and unarmed, against an army of heavily armed soldiers. As she pondered her next move, she noticed a small, unattended console, a terminal connected to the fortress's network. An idea sparked in her mind. She might not be able to fight them directly, but perhaps she could use their own technology against them. She approached the console cautiously, checking to make sure no one was watching. She quickly scanned the display, trying to understand the system. It was complex, but she recognized some of the basic commands. With trembling fingers, she began to type, trying to access the security cameras, the communication systems. Anything that could give her an advantage. She was a scavenger, not a hacker, but she had learned a few things over the years, skills that might just save her life. As she delved deeper into the system, she discovered something that made her blood run cold. A map, a holographic map of the entire region, showing the locations of other human settlements, other pockets of survivors. And each location was marked with a target, a symbol of impending destruction. Anya realized the truth. This wasn't just about capturing a few elders. This was a systematic extermination, a final push to wipe out the last vestiges of humanity. The enemy had returned, not just to send a message, but to finish what they had started 3,000 years ago. The weight of this revelation settled heavily on Anya's shoulders. She knew she had to do more than just rescue her elders. She had to warn the others, to alert them to the danger, to give them a chance to survive. She had to become more than a scavenger, more than a survivor. She had to become a symbol of hope, a spark of defiance in the face of overwhelming darkness, but how? How could one person, armed with nothing but her wits and a tattered book, possibly stand against such a powerful enemy? As she struggled with this daunting task, a sudden alarm blared through the fortress. Red lights flashed, and the soldiers sprang to attention, their weapons raised. They had detected an intruder. Anya knew she had been discovered. She had to escape, to get out of the fortress, to warn the others. But as she turned to flee, she saw a group of soldiers rushing towards her, their weapons trained on her. She was trapped. Surrounded. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to give in to despair. She had come this far. She had faced so many challenges. She would not surrender now. She took a deep breath, and as the soldiers closed in, she made a desperate move, a move that would determine her fate, and perhaps the fate of humanity. She lunged forward, not towards the soldiers, but towards the holographic map, the map that showed the locations of the other survivors, the map that held the key to their survival. She had one last chance to send a message, one last chance to ignite the spark of rebellion, one last chance to fight back against the darkness that threatened to engulf them all. Anya crashed into the console, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The alarm screamed, the soldiers closing in, but she ignored them. Her eyes were fixed on the holographic map, the tiny blips of light representing the scattered remnants of humanity. She had to warn them. She had to give them a chance. With a surge of adrenaline, she bypassed the security protocols, accessing the network's broadcast system. She uploaded a simple message, a warning, a plea for survival. It was a desperate gamble, a message in a bottle cast out into the vast ocean of the ruined world. She didn't know if anyone would receive it, but she had to try. As she finished uploading the message, the soldiers reached her. They grabbed her roughly, their masked faces emotionless. They dragged her away from the console, her struggles futile against their superior strength. They bound her hands and feet, their grip like iron. They marched her through the fortress, deeper into the mountain, to a chamber of cold, metallic grandeur. It was the command center, the heart of the enemy's operations. The commander stood at the center of the room, his back to her, his attention focused on a holographic display. He turned as she was brought before him, his masked face impassive. Anya stared at him, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew this was the one in charge, the leader of this brutal campaign. The one who had ordered the destruction of her world. "You are the scavenger," the commander said, his voice amplified and distorted by his mask. "The one who infiltrated my fortress." Anya remained silent, her gaze unwavering. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her fear. "You have caused me a great deal of trouble," the commander continued. "But your actions have also revealed something interesting." He gestured towards the holographic display. Anya saw that it was showing the message she had broadcast, the warning she had sent out to the other survivors. "You have ignited a spark," the commander said, his voice laced with a hint of amusement. "A spark of defiance. But a spark is easily extinguished." He turned back to the display, his gaze sweeping across the map, taking in the locations of the human settlements. "I will snuff out that spark," he said coldly. "I will crush any hope of rebellion. I will finish what the council started 3,000 years ago." Anya felt a surge of anger, a burning desire to defy him, to fight back against his cold, ruthless logic. "You won't succeed," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "We will survive. We will rebuild. We will never give up." The commander chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Such admirable spirit," he said. "But misplaced. You humans are a dying breed. Your time is over." He turned to his soldiers. "Take her away," he ordered. "Prepare her for interrogation." Anya was dragged away, her mind racing. She knew what interrogation meant. They would try to extract information from her, to learn the locations of the other survivors, to discover any secrets she might possess. She had to resist. She had to protect the others. She was taken to a dark, sterile chamber, a place of cold, metallic surfaces and humming machinery. She was strapped to a table, her arms and legs bound tightly. A bright light shone in her eyes, blinding her. The commander entered the chamber, followed by two soldiers carrying strange devices. Anya's heart pounded in her chest. She knew what was coming. "Tell me," the commander said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "Where are the other survivors? What do you know about their plans?" Anya remained silent, her gaze fixed on the commander's masked face. "You will tell me," the commander said, his voice hardening. "One way or another." The soldiers approached her with the devices. Anya closed her eyes, bracing herself for the pain. But even as she faced the unimaginable, a flicker of defiance remained within her. She would not break. She would not betray her people. She would protect the spark, the hope, the dream of a future for humanity. As the soldiers activated the devices, a surge of energy coursed through Anya's body. She gasped, her muscles convulsing. The pain was excruciating, unlike anything she had ever experienced. But through the pain, she held on to her resolve, her mind focused on the faces of the children, the stories of the elders, the legacy of her ancestors. The commander watched her, his masked face impassive. He could see the pain in her eyes, the struggle in her body. But he could also see the unwavering spirit, the refusal to yield. He signaled to the soldiers to stop. He approached Anya, his masked face inches from hers. "You are strong," he said, his voice low and menacing. "But everyone breaks eventually." Anya stared back at him, her eyes filled with defiance. "You underestimate us," she whispered. "We are survivors. We are resilient. We will never give up." The commander chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "We shall see," he said. He turned to his soldiers. "Increase the intensity," he ordered. "Break her." The soldiers nodded and adjusted the devices. Another surge of energy coursed through Anya's body, the pain even more intense than before. She screamed, her body arching against the restraints. But even as she endured the unimaginable, her spirit remained unbroken. Suddenly, a loud explosion rocked the fortress. The lights flickered, and the chamber shook. The soldiers whirled around, their weapons raised. "What was that?" the commander demanded. Before anyone could answer, another explosion rocked the fortress, followed by a series of smaller blasts. The alarms blared, and red lights flashed throughout the chamber. "We are under attack," a soldier shouted. The commander's masked face tightened. "What is the situation?" he demanded. "We don't know, sir," a soldier replied. "We are detecting multiple incursions throughout the fortress." The commander turned to Anya, his eyes narrowed. "What have you done?" he demanded. Anya smiled weakly, a flicker of triumph in her eyes. "I told you," she whispered. "We will never give up." The explosions continued, growing closer, shaking the chamber. The soldiers were in a panic, trying to defend the fortress. The commander knew he had to act quickly. He had to regain control of the situation. He turned to his soldiers. "Secure the perimeter," he ordered. "Find out what is happening." The soldiers rushed out of the chamber, leaving the commander alone with Anya. He stared at her, his masked face filled with rage. "You have underestimated me," he said coldly. "You have made a mistake." He raised his hand, a gesture of power, a symbol of his authority. But before he could act, another explosion rocked the chamber, even more powerful than the others. The ceiling collapsed, sending debris raining down. The lights went out, plunging the chamber into darkness. Anya, still strapped to the table, felt a surge of hope. She didn't know what was happening, but she knew that something had changed. The tide had turned. The balance of power had shifted. In the darkness, she heard the sounds of fighting, the clash of weapons, the screams of soldiers. She heard the roar of engines, the sounds of battle, and then, she heard a voice that echoed through the darkness, a voice that filled her with hope, a voice that she recognized. "Anya, the voice called out. Anya, are you here? Anya's heart leaped in her chest. She knew that voice. It was the voice of one of her elders, one of the keepers of the stories, one of the survivors. I'm here, she cried out, her voice hoarse but filled with hope. I'm here. The voice grew closer, and then, a figure appeared in the darkness, a figure illuminated by the flickering light of a burning torch. It was one of her elders, a woman named Elara, her face etched with worry but her eyes filled with determination. Anya! Elara cried out, rushing towards her. We've come for you. Anya felt a surge of relief, a wave of emotion washing over her. She had been rescued. She had been found. The spark had not been extinguished. It had ignited a fire that was now burning brightly, a fire that would not be easily put out. The fight for Earth had begun. Elara, her face grim but resolute, quickly worked to free Anya from the restraints. The chamber was still shaking from the explosions, the sounds of battle raging closer. We have to get out of here, Elara said, her voice urgent. It's not safe. Anya, her body still weak and aching from the interrogation, nodded. What happened? She asked. How did you find me? Your message, Elara replied. We received your broadcast. It warned us about the attack, about the commander's plan. We knew we had to act. She helped Anya to her feet, supporting her as they made their way through the darkened chamber. We're not alone, Elara explained. Other communities received your message too. They're fighting back. This is a coordinated attack. Anya felt a surge of hope. Her message had reached them. It had ignited the spark of rebellion. But she also knew that this was just the beginning. The commander would not give up easily. As they made their way through the fortress, they encountered other survivors, small groups of humans who had infiltrated the enemy's stronghold. They were armed with whatever they could find, salvaged weapons, makeshift explosives, anything to fight back against the invaders. The fighting was fierce, the corridors of the fortress echoing with the sounds of gunfire, explosions, and desperate cries. Anya and Elara joined the fight, using their knowledge of the fortress to their advantage, slipping through hidden passages, ambushing enemy patrols. They reached the main command center, the chamber where Anya had been interrogated. It was now a scene of chaos, the holographic displays flickering, the floor littered with debris. The commander was nowhere to be seen. He's gone, Elara said, scanning the room. He must have escaped. Anya felt a pang of disappointment. She had hoped to confront the commander, to make him pay for what he had done. But she knew that he would not be defeated so easily. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the chamber, a voice that made Anya's blood run cold. It was the commander, his voice amplified and distorted, broadcasting across the fortress's communication system. You have won a battle, he said, his voice laced with anger. But you have not won the war. I will not be defeated. I will not rest until every last one of you is extinguished. He paused, and then, his voice took on a new edge, a chilling tone that sent shivers down Anya's spine. I have activated the contingency, he said. Project Phoenix is now in effect. Anya and Elara exchanged a look of fear. They had heard whispers of Project Phoenix, a doomsday protocol, a last resort. But they didn't know what it was. What is Project Phoenix? Anya asked, her voice trembling. Before Elara could answer, the fortress began to shake violently. The lights flickered, and the alarms blared. The ground beneath their feet trembled. It's a self-destruct sequence, a survivor shouted. He's going to destroy the fortress. Panic erupted among the survivors. They knew they had to escape, but the fortress was vast and complex, a labyrinth of corridors and chambers. And now, it was falling apart, collapsing around them. Anya and Elara joined the desperate scramble for survival, navigating the collapsing corridors, dodging falling debris, trying to find a way out. The explosions grew closer, the fortress groaning under the strain. They reached a large hangar bay, a vast space where the enemy's armored vehicles were stored. Many of the vehicles had been destroyed in the fighting, but some remained intact. "We can use one of these to escape," Elara said, pointing to a heavily armored transport. They rushed towards the transport, dodging explosions and falling debris. They managed to climb inside, finding the controls. Elara, who had some experience with salvage technology, managed to start the engine. The transport rumbled to life, its powerful engines shaking the hangar bay. Elara steered the vehicle towards the main exit, a massive blast door that was slowly closing. They reached the blast door just as it was about to close. Elara accelerated the transport, pushing it to its limits. The transport slammed into the closing door, smashing through it with a deafening crash. They burst out of the fortress, into the open air, just as the entire structure began to collapse. A massive explosion ripped through the mountain, sending debris flying in all directions. Anya and Elara watched in horror as the fortress, the enemy's stronghold, was consumed by flames. Project Phoenix had been activated. The commander had chosen to destroy his own base rather than let it fall into the hands of the rebels, but as the dust settled, Anya noticed something that made her heart sink. In the distance, she saw a fleet of enemy ships, massive warships descending from the sky. They were heading towards the ruined fortress, their weapons charged. The commander had escaped. He had activated Project Phoenix, destroying the fortress, but he had also called for reinforcements. A massive fleet had arrived, ready to finish what the Council had started 3,000 years ago. The battle for Earth had just escalated. It was no longer just a fight against a single fortress. It was a war against an entire armada, a war for survival, a war for the future of humanity. And as Anya stared at the approaching fleet, she knew that the odds were stacked against them. But she also knew that they would not give up. They would fight. They would resist. They would never surrender. The spark had been ignited, and it would not be extinguished. The massive warships descended, casting long shadows across the ravaged landscape. Anya, Elara, and the other survivors who had escaped the collapsing fortress watched in stunned silence. The sight was overwhelming, a stark reminder of the power they were up against. This wasn't just a local conflict anymore. This was a full-scale invasion. "They've called in the entire fleet," Elara whispered, her voice filled with dread. "We can't fight them. We're outmatched." Anya looked at the faces of the other survivors, their expressions mirroring her own fear. They were just a handful of rebels, armed with salvaged weapons and makeshift explosives, facing an armada of heavily armed warships. The odds were insurmountable, but Anya refused to give in to despair. She had come too far, fought too hard, to surrender now. She remembered the stories of her ancestors, their resilience, their courage, their unwavering spirit. She remembered the message she had sent out, the spark of rebellion she had ignited. And she knew that they were not alone. Other communities had received her message. They were out there, scattered across the desolate landscape, but they were ready to fight. "We're not going to give up," Anya said, her voice ringing with newfound determination. "We're going to fight back. We're going to show them that we will not be extinguished." Elara looked at Anya, her eyes filled with surprise. "But how?" she asked. "We can't possibly defeat them." "We won't defeat them with brute force," Anya replied. "We'll use our wits. We'll use their technology against them. We'll use everything we have to fight for our survival." She turned to the other survivors. "We need to get to the communication center," she said. "We need to contact the other communities, coordinate our efforts, plan our strategy." They climbed back into the armored transport and sped across the desolate plains, heading towards a hidden communication center, a secret base used by the rebels. Along the way, they encountered other groups of survivors, all heading in the same direction, all united in their determination to fight back. They reached the communication center, a hidden bunker built into the side of a rocky outcrop. Inside, they found other rebels, technicians and strategists, working feverishly to coordinate the resistance. Anya took charge, using her knowledge of the enemy's network to access their communication systems, to gather intelligence, to plan their attacks. She discovered that the enemy fleet was not just a monolithic force. It was divided into smaller squadrons, each with its own weaknesses, its own vulnerabilities. She devised a plan, a strategy to exploit those weaknesses, to target the enemy's supply lines, to disrupt their communication networks, to sow chaos and confusion among their ranks. It was a risky plan, a long shot, but it was their only chance. The rebels launched their attacks, small groups of fighters using salvaged weapons and stolen technology to strike at the enemy fleet. They targeted supply ships, disrupting the enemy's flow of resources. They hacked into communication networks, spreading misinformation and confusion. They used guerrilla tactics, ambushing enemy patrols, sabotaging their equipment. The enemy fleet, caught off guard by these unexpected attacks, began to falter. Their advance slowed, their coordination faltered, their morale weakened. Anya, watching the battle unfold on the holographic displays in the communication center, felt a surge of hope. Her plan was working. The rebels were fighting back, defying the odds, proving their resilience, their courage, their unwavering spirit. But the commander was not so easily defeated. He recognized the threat, the coordinated resistance, the spark of rebellion that had ignited across the planet. He knew he had to act quickly, to crush the rebellion before it could grow stronger. He ordered a full-scale assault, deploying his elite forces, his most powerful weapons, his most devastating warships. He targeted the communication centers, the rebel bases, the pockets of resistance. He unleashed his full fury, determined to wipe out the last vestiges of humanity. The battle intensified, the skies filled with the roar of engines, the flash of weapons, the explosions that shook the very foundations of the ruined world. The rebels fought bravely, but they were outnumbered, outgunned, outmatched. They were being pushed back. Their lines broken, their hopes dwindling. Anya, watching the battle unfold, felt a wave of despair wash over her. They were losing. The commander was too powerful. His forces were too overwhelming. They were being crushed. But even in the face of defeat, Anya refused to give up. She remembered the stories of her ancestors, their unwavering spirit, their refusal to surrender. She remembered the message she had sent out, the spark of rebellion she had ignited. And she knew that even if they were defeated, their spirit would live on. Their resistance would inspire future generations. Their fight would not be in vain. Suddenly, a message flashed across the holographic display, a message from an unexpected source. It was a communication from the Galactic Council. They had been watching the battle unfold, observing the conflict between the humans and the commander's forces. And they had made a decision. The Council, it turned out, had not been entirely united in their decision to destroy Earth. There had been dissenters, voices of reason who had argued against the annihilation of humanity. They had seen the potential for good in humans, their capacity for compassion, their ability to learn and grow. And they had decided to intervene. The Council's warships appeared in the sky, a vast fleet of powerful vessels, dwarfing the commander's armada. They moved between the two forces, a silent, imposing presence. A message echoed across the communication system, a message from the Council, their voices amplified and distorted, carrying the weight of their ancient authority. This conflict must end, they said. We have observed your struggle, your resilience, your unwavering spirit. We have seen the potential for good in humanity. We have seen the darkness in the commander's heart. We have made our decision. The Council turned their weapons on the commander's fleet, targeting his warships, disabling his forces. The commander, caught off guard by this unexpected intervention, was forced to retreat. His armada scattered, his forces defeated. The battle was over. The war had ended. Humanity had been saved, not by their own strength, but by the intervention of the Galactic Council. Anya, watching the Council's warships depart, leaving behind a sky now clear of conflict, felt a wave of relief wash over her. They had survived. They had been given a second chance. But as she looked around at the devastated landscape, the ruined cities, the scattered remnants of humanity, she knew that the struggle was not over. The war had ended, but the rebuilding had just begun. They had a long road ahead of them, a journey of healing, of rebuilding, of rediscovering their lost heritage, and then, she noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. On the holographic display, she saw a small blip of light, a signal coming from deep space, a signal that had not been there before. It was a message, a communication from another source, a source that was not the Galactic Council. It was a message from another human colony, a colony that had survived the Council's purge, a colony that had been hiding in the vastness of space, waiting for the right moment to return. The message was simple, a single sentence that echoed across the ruined world, a message that filled Anya with hope, with excitement, with a sense of wonder. We are coming home. The fight for Earth was over. The rebuilding had begun. And the future of humanity, once so bleak, now shone with a glimmer of hope, a promise of a new beginning, a reunion with their lost brethren, a chance to reclaim their place among the stars. The words echoed across the ruined world, a beacon of hope in the aftermath of devastation. We are coming home. Anya stared at the message, her heart pounding with a mixture of disbelief and elation. For generations, they had been scattered, broken, clinging to survival on a ravaged Earth. Now, a lost branch of humanity, a colony that had escaped the Council's wrath, was reaching out, offering a lifeline, a chance to rebuild not just their world, but their entire civilization. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. The remnants of humanity, united by the shared experience of survival and the promise of a new beginning, worked tirelessly to prepare for the arrival of their lost kin. They salvaged what they could from the ruins, gathering resources, repairing what little technology remained, and sharing stories of the old Earth, the Earth that had been, the Earth they hoped to rebuild. Anya, now recognized as a symbol of hope and resilience, played a crucial role in this process. Her knowledge of the enemy's technology, her understanding of their communication networks, and her unwavering spirit made her a natural leader. She worked alongside Alara and the other elders, sharing their stories, their knowledge, their hopes for the future. The arrival of the colony ships was a momentous occasion. They descended from the sky, massive vessels gleaming in the sunlight, carrying within them the descendants of those who had fled Earth 3,000 years ago. The reunion was emotional, a mix of tears, laughter, and shared memories. These were not strangers, but family, separated by time and circumstance, now reunited by fate. The colonists brought with them advanced technology, knowledge of lost sciences, and a wealth of cultural artifacts. They shared their resources, their expertise, and their vision for the future. They spoke of a thriving human civilization among the stars, a network of colonies scattered across the galaxy, a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. Anya learned that these colonists, descendants of the original Exodus, had not forgotten Earth. They had honored its memory, preserved its culture, and waited for the right moment to return. They had been monitoring the situation, observing the conflict with the commander, and when the time was right, they had answered Anya's broadcast, her desperate plea for survival. The rebuilding of Earth began in earnest. The colonists shared their technology, helping to purify the land, to restore the ravaged ecosystems, to rebuild the shattered cities. They shared their knowledge, teaching the survivors about lost sciences, about advanced medicine, about sustainable energy. Anya, along with Alara and others, worked to integrate the two cultures, to weave together the stories of the old Earth with the knowledge of the new. They established schools, libraries, and museums, preserving the history of their people, both the triumphs and the tragedies, ensuring that the lessons of the past would not be forgotten. The transition was not without its challenges. There were cultural differences, disagreements about the best way forward, and the lingering trauma of the past. But the shared goal of rebuilding, of creating a better future, kept them united. Anya found herself drawn to the stories of the colonists, their experiences in the vastness of space, their encounters with other alien races, their understanding of the Galactic Council. She learned that the Council was not a monolithic entity, but a complex alliance of diverse species, some benevolent, some less so. She learned that the decision to destroy Earth had been controversial, a decision driven by fear and misunderstanding. She also learned that humanity, even before the Council's judgment, had been expanding too rapidly, consuming resources, and threatening the delicate balance of the galaxy. It was a harsh truth, but one that Anya recognized. Humanity, in its quest for progress, had lost its way, forgetting the importance of harmony with the universe. The colonists shared their knowledge of sustainable technologies, of living in balance with nature, of respecting the delicate ecosystems of the galaxy. They taught the survivors how to harness clean energy, how to grow food in sustainable ways, how to rebuild their cities in harmony with the environment. Anya realized that the rebuilding of Earth was not just about restoring the physical world, but also about restoring the human spirit. It was about learning from the mistakes of the past, about embracing a new vision for the future, a future where humanity would not just survive, but thrive, not just conquer, but coexist. Years passed, and Earth began to heal. The scars of the past remained, a reminder of the devastation, but the land was once again fertile, the skies were clear, and the cities were rising from the ruins, stronger and more beautiful than before. Anya, now a respected leader and storyteller, watched as the new generation grew up, learning the lessons of the past, embracing the challenges of the future. She saw the spark of hope in their eyes, the determination to build a better world, a world where humanity would finally find its place among the stars, not as a conquering force, but as a responsible member of the galactic community. The stories of the old Earth, the stories of the Council's judgment, the stories of the rebellion, became legends, passed down through generations, reminding them of the sacrifices made, the lessons learned, the importance of unity, resilience, and the unwavering human spirit. Anya, looking back on her life, felt a sense of peace. She had played her part, she had helped to ignite the spark of rebellion, she had helped to rebuild a world. She had carried the stories of her ancestors, she had shared them with the new generation, and she knew that their legacy would live on. One day, as she sat beneath the shade of a newly planted tree, a symbol of hope and renewal, she received a message, a communication from the Galactic Council. They invited her to join them, to share her wisdom, her experience, her vision for the future. Anya accepted the invitation. She traveled to the heart of the Galactic Council, a vast and diverse assembly of alien races, a testament to the interconnectedness of the galaxy. She shared her stories, her insights, her hopes for a future where humanity would play a positive role in the galactic community. She spoke of the importance of balance, of respecting the delicate ecosystems of the universe, of learning from the mistakes of the past. She spoke of the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to overcome adversity, the unwavering belief in hope. The council listened to her words, and they were moved. They saw in her the embodiment of the best of humanity, the compassion, the wisdom, the unwavering spirit. They recognized the potential for greatness in humanity, the capacity for learning, for growth, for positive change, and they made a decision. They welcomed humanity back into the galactic community, not as a threat, but as a partner, a force for good. They recognized Earth as a protected planet, a symbol of resilience, a testament to the enduring human spirit. Anya returned to Earth, her heart filled with joy. She had achieved her dream. She had helped to rebuild her world, she had helped to secure a future for her people, she had helped to bring humanity back into the galactic community. She lived out the rest of her days in peace, surrounded by her loved ones, sharing her stories, her wisdom, her love for her people. She became a legend, a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, the human spirit can endure, can prevail, can build a better future. And as she looked up at the stars, she knew that humanity's journey had just begun. They had returned to the stars, not as conquerors, but as explorers, as learners, as partners in the vast and wondrous tapestry of the galaxy. They had come home. And their future, among the stars, was brighter than ever before.